date into the chat?
I think that's a brilliant idea.
Okay.
Yes, actually, yeah, let's get started. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining this, what we're calling like some sort of like onboarding call for the BlackRock Speed Problem campaign. I would like to invite you, as Mary suggested, to put your name in the chat and where you're calling from. There's quite a few folks on the line today, so we're not going to be able to do introductions. And so, yes, please do put your name and where you're calling from in the chat. And yes, my name is Roberta, and I think I know a lot of you. So great to see you all. Today, I'm a campaigner with Sunrise Project, and I support the BlackRock Big Problem campaign. And before we jump right in, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of context of how we got here, like why are we having this call in the first place? The last few months have been incredibly busy. And I believe, all of you on this call at some point have basically targeted BlackRock. You either called BlackRock and asked them to vote in a certain way for, during an annual general meeting, or you emailed BlackRock and asked them to divest, or maybe you organized an action outside one of their offices, or perhaps you showed up at your local fossil fuel infrastructure to really fight that project back, and you pointed out to BlackRock's investments into their company. And so all of you here have played a great role in this last few months to really raising the profile of BlackRock as this big financial institutions that has been driving the climate crisis in many ways. And despite, its bold announcements back in January of really putting sustainability at the center of its business model, despite that, like we're still seeing BlackRock as the biggest investor of fossil fuels and deforestation companies. And so really BlackRock continues to fail, and it is failing on its climate promises. And so the call today is really for all of you who have taken actions on BlackRock in the last few months, and really to provide the space and opportunity to learn more deeply about the strategy, and really what's next. What are we going to do now that we've proved BlackRock is failing on its climate promises? What is next? And so basically that's what we're going to be focusing the call today. And I'm going to be sharing my screen in a second. Also, my dog is snoring. I don't know if you all can hear it. I hope not. Okay, good. She's a loud snorer. Okay, there it is. Great. Okay. So I'm not going to put my screen, I'm not going to do a full screen. Otherwise I can't see your faces. So I'm going to leave it like this. I hope that's okay. And I can also, this PowerPoint will be shared with you all after this call so that you can access it. But really, I wanted to quickly give you an update, like an overview of what we're going to be discussing today on the call. We're already doing that, sharing about who we are. So please, for those who just joined, add your name in the chat and where you're calling from. Then we're going to take some moment to celebrate everything that we have accomplished together in the last few months. And then we're going to take a deeper dive on our campaign strategy. So really looking at, again, why BlackRock, and what is the strategy, how we're going to get BlackRock to really, shift its capital for good. And also, I am sure that many of you have been asking, what is BlackRock's big problem? Network, is it a coalition? Is it a network? Do you guys do things differently? And so we're also going to take some time to learn about that and how we operate as a network and our principles. And then lastly, we're going to discuss about what is next, and the opportunities that are out there for you all to plug in. And so with that, I am actually going to be sharing this incredible video, which I think some of you probably have seen already, which is a recap of all the actions that we held during the September Swarm. And so the September Swarm was this really dynamic and fun month of actions where basically in many different cities in the US and in Europe, we held distributed and small COVID safe actions outside BlackRock's offices to, again, remind BlackRock that, it's failing on its climate promises, and demanded, to take real action. And so really stop funding deforestation, stop funding tar sands and Arctic oil drilling, and vote for climate, and introduce the kinds of investment products that are actually fossil free. And so we had a lot of fun. It was a very intense month. Like every day we had an action, and we compiled all these incredible actions into one video. So maybe some of you might see yourself in the video. So I'm gonna share this fun video with you in a second. Give me one moment. Okay, can you guys see it? The YouTube image? Yes, okay, great. There you go. So that was
220,000 Americans now dead from the coronavirus.
So that was an exciting video. It was a compilation of all the incredible actions that we held this last month. So give yourself a round of applause. A lot of you worked really hard to pull these actions together. And I actually wanted to pass the mic to my friend and colleague, Jeff, who was going to talk a little bit about what all these actions, among many other strategies and approaches, have ultimately led to. So Jeff, if you want to talk a little bit about the PNG vote, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Yeah, thank you, Roberta, and hello everyone. Great to see you here. I don't know if this is the first time in history that that great direct actions and creative visuals and hard-hitting punk rock soundtracks have led to a successful shareholder resolution vote. Probably not, but in any case, yeah, I'm one of the people that that leads the work on deforestation to get BlackRock to really step up on deforestation within this network. And I guess the headline news is there was a big vote at Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble being the largest consumer goods company in the world, with big footprints, deforestation footprints in the Canadian boreal forest and in Indonesia. There was a shareholder proposal to get Procter & Gamble to do more on deforestation, and the shareholder proposal last week won by a whopping 67%, which is the largest. Actually, it's the very first ever shareholder proposal on deforestation to win. And it won by twice the highest vote that's ever happened before. And some of the background, and BlackRock voted for it. Some of the background is that, we've been hounding BlackRock for 3 years now to defund deforestation, by which we mean a whole bunch of things, which maybe we'll get into. One of those things is to use its shareholder power in its shareholder vote in proxy voting, and to vote for this kind of resolution to get its corporate, investees to defund or do better on deforestation. And we had just put out a report on September 15th showing that BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard, the big three, have all voted the wrong way. They've all voted against every single deforestation related resolution since 2012. And so then we immediately turned our attention to getting them to vote for this deforestation resolution. And BlackRock did, State Street probably did. We don't know about Vanguard. So hugely successful campaign in getting BlackRock to finally step up, at least in this one, key aspect of the work. And what else to say there? I mean, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, except to say, actually, one thing that's very interesting is that they reported on that vote right away. Because this has been, I guess, a quick step back is that some of the other partners in this campaign, Majority Action specifically, and others have been really leading the charge to get BlackRock to vote on climate, by which we mostly mean fossil fuels and energy, to vote the right way on fossil fuel issues and to be more transparent about their votes. And what we did on the deforestation vote was really follow the work that we've learned from, from Majority Action, about how to put pressure on a shareholder resolution and how to follow it up and try to get some transparency on those votes. So it was very interesting that BlackRock did actually report right away publicly how they voted on this, because none of the other asset managers have done that. So it's also in that sense a win. It's a win on deforestation, but it's also a win on transparency. In terms of BlackRock actually telling us how they voted. Of course, they say they voted this way, because it's the right thing to do in terms of the financial risks and the materiality of deforestation, and we agree. They will never admit that they did it because we've been, barricading their offices and so forth. And just a huge congratulations to everybody in this network who's been working so hard on this, because we're moving them in a big way.
Great, thank you so much, Jeff. And yeah, just echoing Jeff's words, a huge congratulations to all of us for this big win, and we're gonna see more for sure. So with that, now I'm gonna pass it to Diana from Sunrise Project, who's gonna kind of walk us through the strategy, on BlackRock, and we're gonna take a little bit of time to go a little deeper than usual. And so I'm gonna share my screen again, but in the meantime, Diana, I'll pass it to you if you want to introduce yourself. Take it away.
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. Diana Best. I'm a senior strategist with Sunrise Project. I help run the BlackRock's Big Problem Global Network. So happy to be here and see some familiar faces and a few new ones as well. So again, as Roberta said, I'm talking to a group of organizers who know the BlackRock campaign, have already been doing lots on BlackRock. So I won't bore you with the basics. I think the aim of this is just to get a little bit deeper about sort of, we know that BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager. We all know that BlackRock's the largest investor in coal, oil, and gas and companies tied to deforestation. But there's a couple other reasons why BlackRock is a really, really interesting target for us to be pressuring, beyond that they're just the worst of the worst. There's a few kind of specifics about the company which make them a really good corporate target. So the first is, Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. He's also the founder. He is a personality. I think most people on this call have either seen videos of him, read his annual letter. This is a man who has a big ego and has a really, really, really wide network of reporters. He's basically a key influencer. So when Larry Fink goes on his talk shows, or he gets interviewed at Davos, or he's on a stage somewhere and he's talking about climate change and the need to sort of push further on climate change, or he makes big announcements, that has a ripple effect to the rest of the industry and really helps to make this a socialized issue that more asset managers are caring about. So when we started this campaign, we really saw that there were a couple of iconic figures within BlackRock that care about their reputation, have a massive, massive social platform that they could be using to talk about climate. And so for that reason, BlackRock was a really interesting and important target for us. The second piece that I want to name is that BlackRock has sort of shown themselves early on that they really do care about that reputation. So when there's protests outside of their office, they respond by trying to defend themselves that they are, fine on climate, or that they're doing this, or they'll come out with a new announcement. That is not the case for every corporate target that probably many of us have worked on. I think some corporate targets, you can go campaign outside of their office, you can hold actions, and they will just stay completely silent. This is not what BlackRock does. We've seen them very much responding to the pressure that we all have been putting on them. And so for that reason, they've sort of put themselves into a corner where they are now in the position of having to defend this climate reputation that they have gone out into the world and said, without a doubt, we're the best on climate. Look at all the stuff that we're doing. We're so great. And now we really have them sort of on their heels playing a defensive role, which is a great position for us to be in as a campaign. Roberta, anything else you want to add on that before we move on? Okay. So how do we actually get BlackRock to move? I think this is one of the biggest questions that we get asked, not only in groups like this, but kind of across our network. So I think the assumption that we need to take is it's going to take lots and lots and lots of different strategies to actually move this behemoth financial institution. Part of that, and a huge part of that, is going to be the kind of sustained grassroots pressure outside of their offices, the bird dogging, sort of individual personal communications with key leadership within BlackRock. But we're also working with a number of insiders within BlackRock. That not only means particular employees with the company, but we're having regular engagement meetings with them. We're working with a lot of BlackRock's clients and shareholders of the company that sort of bring a different angle and a different voice in. So all together, this sort of entire approach of all these different strategies working in tandem is what we're really seeing as moving and shifting BlackRock as a company. I think there's an assumption sometimes of like, well, what does signing a petition do? Or what does an action outside of a BlackRock office do? But it really is sort of a critical piece of this bigger pie, which is helping to shift the overall culture and reputational risk around this company. And as we know, BlackRock cares a tremendous amount about their reputation. Another assumption I just want to name is that coal is, because of its global position, because of the sort of reputational risk that it already has associated with it, coal is sort of seen as already dead. It's a bad investment. It's been losing money for years. It's been toxified, in part because of all of the work that many groups on this call have done for the last 10 years. It was a really easy place to start. That is absolutely not where we end. So we've always, from the beginning of this campaign, assumed that we would start with a coal ask, and we would expand that ask to include oil and gas and deforestation. And we're at that really critical tipping point right now in the campaign where BlackRock has done their sort of first move on coal. They were ready to say, okay, look, we did it, coal, we're done. And we've got them exactly where we want to start pushing them on their exposure on other fossil fuels and companies tied with deforestation. Roberta, anything to add before we move on? Okay. So let's talk big picture about what we sort of hope to do as a campaign. So as I've already mentioned, BlackRock, if you would have read an interview by Larry Fink 2-3 years ago, they would have said, BlackRock is great on climate. We're one of the leaders. We've done enough. We're so great. You read some of the reviews or some of the articles from after BlackRock made their climate announcement again in January. Again, they were like, okay, we said we were good before, but now we're really good. We're like the best leaders there are on climate. Part of what our campaign is trying to do is say that actually we get to define what climate leadership looks like, and you are falling short. And so all of this sustained pressure, all of the work we're doing with media, all of the amazing banners, all of the reports, all of that is helping to own and take back the narrative that actually what BlackRock is doing is insufficient. It is not enough. It's not nearly ambitious, and we are going to keep demanding more of them. So big picture, that's really what we're trying to do. Again, I've sort of talked about this, but the second big outcome is we start them with coal, we move them onto tar sands, other fossil fuels, deforestation, and we really see a wholesale shift, not only in BlackRock, but in the rest of the industry. Which brings me to the last goal, which is part of our assumption with this campaign has always been that if we get BlackRock, the world's biggest asset manager, to make the first move, that we would actually start to see some of these other asset managers that really look up to BlackRock and say, okay, they're the biggest, what are they doing? As soon as we get BlackRock to move, that we would actually start to see some of these other asset managers moving. So yes, we focus on BlackRock, but this campaign is really about shifting the entire asset management business. Okay, just a few more slides from me. These are our current demands, which hopefully are not new to most of you, but we've done a little bit of a facelift, so to speak, on them. I'll give people a moment to just read these. I don't need to read them aloud, but for us, this really captures the breadth of kind of all of the work that we're trying to do around the campaign. And we can take questions, I think, Roberta, is that right? If people have big questions on them. Okay. Well, we can, again, Roberta will share this PowerPoint around. So if people want to just take a deeper look, we can certainly do that and answer questions either on this call or in subsequent calls for sure. Okay, I see one question from Susan. Can I answer that now, Roberta?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a really great question, Susan. Do we have a list of climate funds to suggest? We've been asked this a handful of times. The position that we've taken as a network is that we're not really in the business of promoting other products that are out there. I think there's plenty of resources that are out there that we could direct people to. So Ethos has a fund. There are some decent climate funds out there, but we wouldn't really want to be in the position of endorsing or putting our name or even our sort of brand behind promoting a fund. I think that's a bit of a slippery slope. That being said, I think when we can say, you know, there are better climate funds out there if you're concerned about the risks of to your portfolio around climate change, you should, you know, really be asking yourself, is this BlackRock fund doing enough to account for that? And are there better funds out there? And Mary, that's a great suggestion. Do you want to chime in really quickly with that resource?
A nonprofit called As You Sow has developed a really great list of, and really well-researched list of mutual funds that are deforestation free and fossil free mutual funds that you can purchase as an individual. So that's a place where you can go to get more information. And it's really accessible. And if I can get my act together, I can put the link in the chat. But certainly we can get back in touch and give you that information. And also, I see Green Century is in the chat. Wonderful little firm, actually based in Boston, led by a great lady, Leslie Samuelich. And actually, the shareholder proposal was filed by Green Century at Procter & Gamble. So there are some excellent choices. Check.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, the final slide from me, and then I'll turn it back to Roberta, is we like to think about our campaign as sort of, we're working on different buckets of movement from the company, and that some of these strategies sort of all fit together as part of our bigger campaign. So one of the big buckets we work on, buckets of work, is we want BlackRock to shift their capital. So this is sort of all of the demand sets around their coal exclusion policy expanding to include tar sands, other fossil fuels, and deforestation. So can we see BlackRock adopting stronger policies which really limit or restrict capital investments through some of their products into the companies that are driving climate change? This is also the capital, sort of shifting capital bucket of work, is where all of our work around passive investment vehicles comes in, where we sort of want to see them tighten and expand their criteria on ESG and sort of what they market as sustainable funds, et cetera. So there's a separate bucket of work, which really ties into what Jeff was talking about at the beginning of the call around stewardship and engagement with companies. So BlackRock, as the world's largest asset manager, is of course one of the largest, if not the largest investor in every publicly traded company on earth, meaning that they have a disproportionate influence and power, not only in their engagements with these companies of like coming in and saying, we need to see you change, but also in their ability to vote and actually pass critical shareholder resolutions. So a huge part of what we try and do on this campaign is improve the ambition, the timeline, and the sort of criteria that BlackRock is doing that engagement and how and when they're voting for these climate resolutions. As we've seen from the Majority Action Report and other reports, despite all of this big talk that BlackRock, was improving their stance on climate change, they're still not voting for these climate resolutions consistently. So part of our campaign is really trying to push and drive them towards taking that stronger, more ambitious engagement with the companies they're invested in. And the final kind of big bucket, which is here in the center, is changing mindset. So we know, we've already talked about Larry Fink, his ego, his reputation around being a sort of climate hero. We also know that the employees of BlackRock really care about the company that they work for. They see themselves as one of the good guys, not a sort of predatory Wall Street, Goldman Sachs-like company. These are people that tend to think that BlackRock is doing a lot of good in the world. We know that we can start to change hearts and minds by engaging with employees there and really challenging them to look more closely at BlackRock's actual legacy of destruction and investment in fossil fuels worldwide. So that's part of what we talk about when we talk about changing mindsets. That includes also working with other sort of key leadership within BlackRock, other than Larry Fink, who have tremendous power within the company, and getting them to sort of understand where and how they need to shift or change. So with that, I'll kind of stop there unless there's any questions. Thanks, Roberta.
Thank you, Diana. Yes, I think we can take a couple minutes if there are any questions or thoughts before we move on. Great. If there are no questions, then now I'm going to introduce Jason, who is going to be walking us through our network and how we operate and our principles, and kind of give us a sense of why we're so cool. Just kidding. I'm going to share my screen, Jason. In the meantime, feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello, everybody, from my not so cool parking lot in a car where I'm just dropped my kid off at his tennis lessons, which sounds fancy, but it's not. Hello, I'm Jason Mogus. I'm based in British Columbia, Canada, Coast Salish Territory. I have been a consultant and campaigner for 25 years on digital innovation. We used to call it websites, and it kind of became about how new things happen. And I ended up working with Sunrise because they're doing a lot of innovation in how we campaign, including on the BlackRock campaign. So Roberta thought it would be good for me to share some of the philosophy, if you will, or a framework. We actually have a campaigning framework, which is about marrying the energy of grassroots power with the kind of the focus of what NGO and policy leadership can bring to the table, especially for a campaign on such a complicated target such as this. So looks like we're good there, Roberta. Do you want to? So I'm just gonna, this is a presentation I've given probably 500 times. to various people around the world. This is a super condensed 4-minute, 6-minute version of it, about the philosophy or the framework that comes from that is behind this campaign. So if you want to go to the first slide, ultimately it's about building power, which is probably fairly obvious in this age we live in, but needs to be said in a lot of places where, you know, releasing reports and doing analysis and even getting an article in the newspaper is a form of power, but is it enough power to really challenge these entrenched industries, particularly when you see how much money is spent on fake grassroots campaigning and organizing from the fossil fuel lobby and from, you know, bad actors on Wall Street. Next slide, the nature of power has really changed in the last 10 years. What we might call, you know, networked power, networked society. The U.S. government studied this a long time ago. It's kind of become like a common knowledge now that we live in this networked society, but it's really shifted a lot of things. It's shifted how decisions get made, who's involved with decisions. Next slide. And ultimately, you know, the world of social change, if you will, was not particularly well suited to the age of wicked problems, which is that image on the left, and a high degree of complexity, which is a constantly shifting landscape. So you can't just come up with, you know, linear solutions for extremely complex problems. And one single actor working on single issues are not the ones that are delivering the change that we see. So I actually did a big research report on who was winning Kansas networks, and that's really a marriage of the bottom-up power. It says my internet connection is unstable, but are we okay? Yeah, everyone sees me?
Yeah,
Can I get the next slide, Roberta? So it's a marriage of the kind of having autonomy with partners and supporters, a lot of you on the call and partners, but that it's actually focused and there's central strategy, there's resources. So it's like a way of marrying old power with new. And this was the kind of the key to success of the Fight for 15 campaign, Bernie Sanders campaign. It's really what led to the rise of 350 and Divisible. The Sunrise movement has come out of this same type of thinking. So basically what it means, you know, there's 4 aspects of it. I'll just do them each briefly. And if you're interested, I can share some further resources on this. So the 4 attributes that we found in these and that we use in our own campaigning, the first one is around, next slide, please, framing a compelling, being open to grassroots power. So the campaign very much relies on grassroots power and on the distributed power of our groups working on different issues as a way for us to build power. It's not an afterthought. We've built people power into the core strategy of the campaign. And so it's hopefully how we do everything. And you can certainly hold us to account for that if you get more involved. Second slide is about storytelling and about framing things in a way, you know, basically it's like, it's a big enough problem to get out of bed for, but not so big that you never want to get out of bed. We're not trying to stop climate change. We are trying to do something ludicrously hard, but it's not as ludicrously hard as, you know, ending all fossil finance. That's ultimately one of our goals, but this campaign goal is about BlackRock and about the power of this one sector that's kind of unseen. Next slide. So that's more of the ways that we kind of talk about the work and how people are involved with the work, but the way that we do the work is still very much about connecting movements together in this idea of hashtag, not brand. You know, we don't really care that people go out there and use our logo or talk about the BlackRock big problem. It's great if people do, but it's really about you telling the story in a way that works for you. If you're in Denver, you need to talk about local climate impacts and engage with local employees, which is different than what we might say in New York or in London. And that's actually okay. And the power of most campaigns that have had any impact is when they bring together multiple movements together. We still kind of struggle with that one a little bit as trying to integrate racial justice campaigning into this work and having an Indigenous rights framework into this work that Jeff and Fo have really brought and Amazon Watch. But the best campaigns that have been most successful are bringing more than just the one constituency together. And finally, the last slide is how the campaign is run, which is really with a lot of strategy and focus on particular leverage points that we and others identify, where we're focusing all of our energies on kind of one place, where we're in this for the long haul. We're not expecting to, you know, shift Wall Street's practices in 6 months. and we're also resourced for the fight. So we work hard to get resources to frontline movements. So ultimately, just the next slide is like a summary of those pieces. That being opening to grassroots power and framing it in a compelling way to bring people in, doing it in a way that builds power in multiple constituencies, and running with a sense of focus and discipline. That's how you actually build enough power to move the needle on these big, crazy issues. And the last thing I like to say is we've seen this literally happen on the BlackRock campaign, where a grandmother who glued on to the BlackRock office in London actually had a huge impact on the leadership of the London office. And so that grassroots power really contributed to Larry Fink's climate announcements earlier this year. But the grassroots power alone didn't do that. There was also all the work that had been done previously, the reports, the other actions in other offices, the FT Financial Times articles. It's a way to marry the potential of grassroots power with what kind of NGOs and kind of the more expert-driven campaigning bring to the table. And we both need each other. NGOs can't get it done on their own, and grassroots power can't get it done on its own. So that's our campaigning framework. And this will be difficult to read, but if you go to blackrocksbigproblem.com and you look in the footer, you'll see a link to a page called Principles. I'm not going to go through each of these, but I just want you to know that we've spent some time working with other allies who've done a lot of deep thinking around how we look at power and privilege in our network, how issues is interconnected. We also are really committed to nonviolent organizing. So yeah, I'd encourage you to check out these principles about how we expect people to engage in the campaign. It is an open source campaign, so we don't, there's no like control. If you join the campaign, you're kind of, we'll give you tools and you can help bring the campaign to life in the way you see fit. But we have these principles to make sure that we're actually supporting each other and being allies in the best way possible.
Great, thank you so much, Jason. That was such a great, concise way to introduce this concept and our network. Does anyone have any questions for Jason? We have time maybe for like one question. So I think I see one question from Scott, whether we're asking people to engage with BlackRock at their local offices. Is that what you meant, Scott? Great. Diane or Jason, do you want to chime in, or anyone actually from our network?
You can answer that, Roberta, but yes, I mean, yes, in a smart way. We need to develop more around how you can engage if there isn't a BlackRock office. That's why being part of the Stop the Money pipeline has been great, because there's like more Chase local opportunities for people depending on where they are. But yeah, a lot of our work has been building grassroots power and moving that up to employee engagement in cities where BlackRock has offices.
I might add quickly, I mean, as Jason, I think, pointed out, when we talk about engaging with BlackRock, we mean it at every level in every way. So engaging at local BlackRock offices doesn't mean necessarily meeting with your fund manager at a BlackRock office, but it could. But it could also mean barricading the doors of a BlackRock office and, you know, holding a mass mobilization at the BlackRock offices, which has been a key sort of focal point of the campaign.
Yeah, and actually that's a great segue to what's next in the agenda, which is really about like, okay, what's next? Like, how can you plug in? And so before I pass it to Mary and Debbie, we're going to talk about one way for you all to plug in if you're interested. I just wanted to mention that we are under the most uncertain times. We're living under the most uncertain times. The elections are just around the corner. And I think by this point, you know, we're all planning for different scenarios, right? And so it's very likely not going to be the type of election that ends on election night. We might be looking at an election month. And so like it may take some time for results to come in, which may lead to some chaotic times. There is a possibility, I've been talking with some of you about this, of a contested election scenario, which may require all of our grassroots power and energy to go into that, really to focus on saving our own democracy and protecting our democracy. And so I do want to mention that in terms of what comes next, we're going to be spending, for as long as it's necessary. Again, we'll see how this election moment will go. But, for the time being, we're not going to be hosting like any actions, for example, outside BlackRock's offices, because that's not right now. Again, like our energies should go to get out the vote. If you're as a volunteer or your organization can do that, or really, if the time arises, really doing actions to protect our democracy. And so like, we're not going to be organizing anything like the September Swarm in the next month or so, but certainly we're going to be building a foundation when we're ready again. We're going to pick up from when we have left and continue to pressure BlackRock. And so with that in mind, I think there's still some things that we can do during this time to continue with this drumbeat. And so I'm going to pass it to Mary and Debbie, who they're going to talk about something that, we can still do regardless of the madness and the world in which we're living, that it's a really exciting work. And actually you can do even if you don't live in a city that has a BlackRock office, which I think makes it even more exciting. So are you ready, Mary and Debbie? Should I kick it to you?
Yeah, we're ready. So hi everyone, my name is Debbie New and I'm here with Mary Cerulli. You'll be hearing from her in a minute. We are part of Climate Finance Action. We are located in Boston, and we're also part of Stop the Money Pipeline in Massachusetts. And it's great to see so many people who work with us on that here on the call tonight. Thanks for joining. And I'm glad you introduced us that way, Roberta, because what we're going to talk about is something you can do regardless if there's a BlackRock near you. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to talk through a few slides of an exciting opportunity for all of us. So just checking to make sure you can see Larry Fink. Good? Okay, so it wasn't that long ago that Larry Fink, just a couple of weeks ago, I think, that Larry Fink claimed, "I am an environmentalist." So we know that in our September swarm that we're adding to growing pressure on the street and online. And we know BlackRock sees us and hears us, especially after our swarm in September. So Larry Fink, as Roberta was saying, BlackRock, or Diana was saying, BlackRock tends to react when we show up. Larry Fink reacted and he said, "I am an environmentalist." Go figure. And he also said, "Our job at BlackRock is to follow what our clients want." He went on to say, "Environmentalists who have been protesting BlackRock's investment in fossil fuel companies," that's us, "need to go to the money owners and talk to them and have them change." So we know the urgency of the climate crisis means that we need more pressure, but where can that come from? So Larry talked about clients and money owners. So who are they? Well, some very big money owners are pension funds, state pension funds and city pension funds too. We're going to talk about New York City's pension fund and the New York City comptroller in a minute. But these state and city pension funds are workers' retirement funds. And this image shows you some of the workers whose retirement funds are invested in fossil fuels and deforestation through their pension funds without them knowing it. So these are people like teachers, union members, police, firefighters, anyone who works for your city or your state. You probably know some of them, and maybe some of you are them. So all of these workers, their money goes into a big pension fund. So all of their separate pots of money go in one big pot of money. And that pot of money can be very large. And that's why we're targeting these pension funds. These pension funds then in turn hire big investors like BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street to invest that money. And BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street in particular turn around and invest that money in these kinds of companies that you see listed here, the big ones and the bad ones. And in fact, BlackRock not only owns fossil fuel companies, but they also own utilities and pretty much everything. You can bet that they're part of it. So this is where I turn it over to Mary to talk about the people who are the decision makers at these pension funds.
Yeah, Debbie, that was so great. And I just want to let everyone know, if you have any more questions regarding kind of like this concept of pension funds and workers' retirement savings, we can help you out to understand more or go into more detail. But what was really great and really fun is that these pension funds, the folks that influence the pension funds, stood up and chose to go against reinstating Lee Raymond, who was like the former Exxon CEO and like designer of climate denial. And so these states you see on this graphic here, all those state treasurers stood up and said, we are against reinstating this fossil fuel guy to JP Morgan Chase's board. And so that was a culmination of a lot of work, a grassroots work, to give the opportunity to these state treasurers to make themselves known. And they want to be climate leaders. And I learned so much from Diana just a little while ago, saying there's a reputation here. And so these state treasurers were all excited to take this opportunity given to them by grassroots organizers. So this slide shows you that state treasurers count. They might not be able to, like, check it off and just decide on their own, but they have influence. And you can see here, they have influence over $3.3 trillion worth of the workers' retirement savings. So yeah, they want to do a good job, and you know what? They get elected and they listen to their constituents. Next slide, please. So here's some pictures. You might live in some of these states: Oregon, Connecticut, Vermont, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Maryland, Maine, Wisconsin. These all are political people, care about their reputation and want to do what's right, but just need that little push. Next slide. And because I'm from Boston, here's our state treasurer, Deb Goldberg. And it was so interesting. We got a meeting with her, and Debbie was with me and a few other people from Mothers Out Front, Mass Divest. We went and met with her. And the first thing she said in the little like room before we went to the meeting was like, I don't get enough, I don't have enough recognition. The Massachusetts Attorney General has more name recognition than me, and I do 12 times as much as she does. We said, oh man, we could give you some opportunities. So we did. And she actually came out against Lee Raymond, and she actually came out to support a utility campaign that we were involved in. That was an investor-led utility campaign to keep those utilities in line, not to just pledge a net zero, but actually do something about it. Next slide. So then what do? We said, Jeff, Friends of the Earth, we want to work with you. We want to give someone else an opportunity to come out against a big player in the deforestation arena. And so we actually talked to and organized over 5 months. We organized Scott Stringer's office. He's the New York City comptroller, and he has influence over New York City's pension plans. And so he said, I'd like to write a letter to State Street. We were like, no problem. And so we helped him draft that. We made him feel really good about leading that, and I think that had I think that had some real influence over this Procter and Gamble vote. At least I want to think that. Jeff was certainly great to work with. Okay, next slide. And so we come back to what needs to change. We need to change BlackRock. We need to change Vanguard. We need to change State Street. And the reason why this is working with the BlackRock target is because these guys don't want to have anything to do with us. Because they actually say, what do we have to do so you won't do those things that you're doing to BlackRock? So everything counts, and it's great to work together. And we hope that we can continue working together. We're planning on helping folks understand their own state issues and see how we can support you in doing some of these finance campaigns. Check.
Yeah, and right now we're working on a training and a toolkit to help all of us do more with our state treasurers and comptrollers. So stay tuned for that. Check.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Mary and Debbie, for that great overview. So we have just a couple minutes left on this call, but I still want to open it up for questions, if there are any. And this could be about what we just learned about really mobilizing asset owners like pension funds and state treasurers, or anything else that you have heard today before we hear about how you can get plugged in. You can just unmute yourself if you have a question and ask away. Okay, so if there are no questions, I'm just gonna share my screen once again to bring us to the very last slide that kind of summarizes, so what's next? So today you've heard a lot of information, and you know, we kind of like went a little deeper, right, in terms of like some of the strategies and approaches that we use in this campaign. But I want you to like not worry, like in terms of like maybe you've missed a couple of things, or maybe you don't fully grasp something that you've learned today. That's like totally normal. And I wanted to say this call is not the end of these conversations. This is really an onboarding call, so an opportunity for you all to now take your climate finance campaigning to the next level and really help us shift, you know, these financial institutions. And so there's a couple of ways that folks can really plug in. I think some of you have already started to do some of this, and that's great. And for those who are not, if you're interested, again, please do get in touch with us so we can plug you in. But the first thing that comes to mind is please join our network calls. So we meet once a month. It's usually the first Wednesday of the month at 11 a.m. Pacific time. It's such a great place to really learn about our partners and the work that they're doing around this campaign. And you can really see the kind of like the vast network that it's working on this. And it's also a great place just to connect with one another. I think one of the things that maybe we weren't able to really show today is like how our partners work with one another throughout the year in ways that, you know, we don't always predict. And so like we have so many of our partners joining forces at, you know, moments that we never thought we would, right? But it's just like it makes sense and we do it, and we have the infrastructure for that to take place. So it's really beautiful. So please, you know, again, if you can and interested, join our network calls. Those are really a great place to, again, plug in more with the strategy. The other piece is you just learned a little bit about this asset owner mobilization work, and so really pressuring state treasurers, pension funds, city controllers, which I think it's on in New York anyway, to get them to pressure asset managers even more. If you're interested in doing some of that work, please reach out to Mary and Debbie. There's going to be a training soon, so we'll let you know about that. The other piece is we're going to be hosting a training on Sunday, November 1st on communications and how to talk to press. Something that was really clear after the swarm was that grassroots leaders are really eager to learn more about how to, you know, frame our stories that we're trying to tell, like how to pitch, for example, local reporters around what we're trying to accomplish, and really how to ultimately, you know, amplify our battles. And so we're joining forces with Sunrise Movement, with EBDSA. So we're still trying to finalize a time, but again, please, if you're around, attend this training. And if not, we're going to be holding many more of this. Yeah, get in touch with me and I'll keep you in the loop. Then election resources, if you have not plugged in with a local group yet about how to organize at this time, let me know. I have some resources that I'm happy to share. These are not resources that like BlackRock's Big Problem Network is like operating under, but it's really myself as an individual agent. I have some stuff that I would be happy to share with you. And then the last thing is, when this election madness is over, we're gonna be starting to hold hubs grassroots mobilization calls. And so this is gonna be a really fun, great space for all of us who organize actions, and we organize really this grassroots power that Jason talked about at the beginning. We're gonna basically be creating a space for all of us to come together again once a month to discuss tactics and strategies and like share ideas, support one another, come together whenever it makes sense, and really just strengthen this grassroots power that we are building. So if you are interested in joining those, again, they're not gonna be starting right away because again, we're kind of like pausing the public facing actions, but we're gonna be starting them as soon as I can. We have an interest form just to help me keep track of who wants to be part of this call. And please fill that out. And then you're going to be receiving a doodle poll in a couple of days to help us figure out the best time for us to meet again when the time comes, so that it's a time that works for most. So I'm going to put the Google form in the chat. And with that, yes, this concludes our onboarding call today. I hope you enjoyed this time together. Again, this is not the ending of our conversations, it's just the beginning. I hope you feel inspired to continue to plug in. Yes, please do reach out to any of us to get plugged in into the various calls and the various trainings and all of that fun stuff. I'm gonna follow up with an email with this PowerPoint and the various links that were shared throughout the call. So thank you, everyone. If you want to unmute yourself and just say goodbye to everyone, that would be great.
Roberta,
Bye.
Adios.
we need
Bye,
permission to
everybody.
access that Google Doc.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Cynthia. I'll do that right now.
Nice to see everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, everyone. Take care.